How's it going, everyone? I hope you're all doing good. It's the start of a new year, 2022, and it's around this time when you see people make a real effort to start it off right. They have their New Year's resolutions, all to try and make this year better than the previous one. Well, I've decided not to make any resolutions this year. Instead, in this video, I'm going to review the previous year and take a look at both the artwork and the content that I've made. And it's always a good idea to do this, right? To look back and reflect. It helps to inform the changes that you might want to make, and ultimately it tells you whether you are on the right track. So with that being said, let's get into this. In 2021, I created a fair amount of content consisting of 45 YouTube videos, 12 videos on Patreon, along with 15 study documents and process papers. So in total, that's 52 videos, which isn't bad at all. I mean, there's 52 weeks in a year, so on average I'm uploading once a week, which I'm happy with considering I also have to work my 9-to-5 day job, which I've discussed plenty of times before. Now, creating these videos is all good, but only if the videos are of value, right? Anyone can just quickly throw something together and upload it onto YouTube. In fact, that's what most YouTube content is. I'm not saying that what I make is of the highest quality, because it's really not. I mean, the way that I edit is very simple, but when I do create a video, I aim for one thing depending on what the video sets out to do. If it's a tutorial, for instance, then I aim to teach as well as I can. If it's an audio log, the new podcast-like content that I've been making, then I aim to have an entertaining as well as informative discussion surrounding a subject. Basically, with each video that I make, I can outline the intention behind it, and then that becomes the priority. And so, I'd like to think that I've stayed true to that. You know what you are getting when you click on my videos. One series of videos that I introduced last year were the study sessions, and I want to take a moment to talk about these because 15 out of the 45 YouTube videos that I uploaded last year were these study sessions. Now, if you watched the video that I made right at the start of last year, in which I explained why I wanted to do something like this, you know that I started doing this in an effort to not only teach and help others looking to learn, but also to teach myself. Throughout these study sessions, I've been covering the anatomy of the human skeleton with the intention of eventually covering the muscles that I'll likely get onto this year. Anatomy is one of those subjects that has always been a weak point for me. I don't have much experience drawing people, and so ultimately I'm doing this in an effort to get better at drawing people. I want to be able to invent and draw figures from my imagination, drawing them from imagination in perspective and placing them within the environments that I draw. And, you know, there's a lot of other people, you guys, who would like to do the same, or maybe you can, I don't know, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. Anatomy, though, is a rather intimidating subject, especially for a beginner, but it's fundamental, and that's why I've taken it upon myself to document my own progress through these videos. The way that I've always approached learning something new is to take my time. You know, I like to dwell in one area for a while and look under every rock, if that's even a saying. I'm not sure, I think I just made that up. Anyways, it's clear to see if you've watched these videos the in-depth approach that I've decided to take, and it's going to be a long pursuit, but you know, we've almost covered the skeleton now, and then I'll be moving on to the muscles, which I think will appeal to more people. I do think that I've learnt a lot this year, and I'm happy that I have these videos as evidence that can also be of use to others looking to learn. I also transfer what I cover in these videos onto paper in the form of these study documents, and these are available on Patreon under the £1 a month tier. So it's pretty cheap. It's £5 a month to access the perspective and realistic drawing tutorials, and these are the same as the tutorials that I upload onto YouTube. Speaking of which, in addition to the study sessions, I have also uploaded a few perspective drawing tutorials this year, and perspective is a subject that I started covering on the channel probably around 2 years ago, if not more, and I think there'll always be some content surrounding perspective on the channel because it's something that I really enjoy.
I know that a lot of people have started to discover my channel now through the perspective drawing series that I had made. I do intend on bringing both perspective and anatomy together eventually when I'm confident enough to start drawing people in perspective as well. At the moment though, these tutorials typically show how to draw buildings and vehicles, but those are a nice addition to the channel and they also work well on Patreon.
So you might have realised by now that I like to view the channel as a means of documenting my progress as an artist, and it's all good creating videos, teaching people and sharing what I learn, but in addition to all of that, there's also everything outside of my art, right, that's generally referred to as life. And I know that some of you, most of you probably, only come here for the drawing, for the tutorials or whatever, but it's always been important to me to try and put more of myself into the content, and that sounds quite self-obsessed, but trust me, it's not. I just think it's important for you to understand the artist behind the art.
That's one thing that I've realised, is that it's not just skill that influences an artist's work, it's also their lifestyle, it's their ideas and opinions. Art is very individual, and that's something that's often overlooked. Because it has such a significant impact on the work that is produced, I do try to make an effort to present myself in some of the videos that I make. More specifically, the audio logs that I also introduced this year. I look at these like podcasts, right? I have some drawing on screen whilst I talk about anything, and I do find myself sharing my own experiences in these videos, and I think I share enough, right? I do value my privacy, and in a way, because of the content that I make, I don't need to put myself out there as much as other people do. Fundamentally, the channel is based on the subject of drawing, but I also want to have some more personal interactions with everyone. So I'm going to keep making these whenever there's something that I want to talk about.
So those types of videos made up most of the videos that I uploaded onto YouTube last year, and I'm happy with what I'm able to tick off the list there in terms of what I can provide through that content. Now, in regards to what I'd like to add, I do think there's room for me to introduce some more videos surrounding the subject of realistic drawing again. If you're familiar with the channel, you'll know that in the early days I used to make a lot of videos based on realistic drawing, so I'm aware that I do have an audience for that.
As I mentioned earlier, I have a series of realistic rendering videos on Patreon in which I narrate and explain the process of creating these drawings step by step. Now, I've discussed this before on the channel, but I hit a wall a few years back where I felt rather limited when I was making realistic drawing videos, because when working this way, most of the time you are relying on a photograph as reference, and to me, how you approach drawing a photograph, no matter what it's of, was always the same, or similar, should I say. Aside from the techniques required to create realistic looking textures and details, there isn't much more to learn. And once you do learn how to convincingly copy these photographs, the process is, to some extent, just rinse and repeat. So that's why I eventually moved on to covering other aspects surrounding drawing, like perspective and anatomy. All of the drawing fundamentals, they seem to be endless, and as daunting as that can sound, I really appreciate that there's always more to learn, especially when I rely on these topics to make content.
So all in all, I'm happy with the content that currently exists on the channel, and I'm excited to progress with it all. I think by the end of this year, I'd like to be well into the study sessions covering anatomy, looking at the muscles, drawing the figure in perspective, and it's going to be a long pursuit, but I do have the time, and each week, video after video, we'll get there. And I say we because I know there's a lot of you who have been following along, learning to draw yourselves. So with that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
If you enjoyed the content I create, then do consider becoming a patron on Patreon. You will gain access to exclusive tutorials, study documents, process papers, real-time drawing footage and more. Plus, you will also be supporting me in a more personal way. Other than that, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon.